Hello, and good whatever time of day it is for you, wherever you are on the internet. So, our Nerd vs. World podcast has been doing fabulously well of late, and so we decided it was about time that we started another one. If you've not heard Nerd vs. World already, then by all means go and check that out. You can catch up with all the episodes of that on our website, but after you listen to this one, of course. So, welcome to episode 1 of the WonkyCast. We'll hopefully be putting out an episode of this every Monday morning, and we've got a massive list of authors, musicians, comedians, and so forth coming for over the next few weeks. But to kick us off in style, we spent a bit of time this weekend with the very lovely horror and sci-fi author Theresa Derwin, who we met a couple of weeks ago at a convention in Wales. We had a particularly pleasant evening chatting over a few beers, and she kindly invited us up to the launch event of a new anthology of horror, science fiction and fantasy short stories. So yes, we caught up, we chatted with Theresa and a few of the other guests about the book itself, about gender parity in fiction and in publishing, and tons more. So yes, by all means, have a listen, here it is, and enjoy.
Big fucking gun!
Well, it's rolling, so we'll be able to jump in at some point. Okay, so yeah, we're at the Esquires in Coventry this evening for we're at book launch.
It's a very curious choice for a gender parody.
for Her Dark Voice. We are joined by several people around the table, so I don't know if people want to introduce themselves. Obviously, I'm Spindles and others over here.
I'm Theresa Derwin. I run My Box Press, which is an imprint of Fringeworks.
Which is me. I'm Adrian Middleton. I run Fringeworks, and obviously Theresa's taking her own imprint, Nightwatch Press, away soon, so that's where we're working together at the moment.
I'm Jan Edwards. I'm a writer. I'm also part of the Alchemy Press, which used to be in Birmingham, is now in North Staffordshire.
Cool.
I'm Steve Jones. I carry the boxes.
Marvellous.
And here's the green room, the very valuable green room. And this is Jason.
And I'm a dog's body.
Dog's body, general dog's body,
Dog's body.
bunny sitter.
Cool, okay, so does someone want to introduce us to what the event is, what the book is? What
Right,
it's all
yeah.
about, why we're here?
We are here, hopefully, to raise lots and lots of dosh for a breast cancer campaign. We'll be joined shortly by Vicky Stock, who's an avid campaigner for cancer research. And this book actually came about 4 years ago as a little concept in my head. I was sharing a room with writer Raven Dane at Alt Fiction, quite a good little event that Alex used to run. He now runs Edge Lit. And basically we were in the room together talking about the gender parity issue and the fact that we were a couple of lone voices screaming in the dark. And on panels, we were put on panels as why should women be included in fandom type panels,
Right.
as opposed to I'm a writer, it's what I do.
Yeah.
So we talked about the issue of female representation in fandom, and I just said I'd like to produce a book with all women writers, and I'd like to prove that women can write just as dark as men can write. So what we have here is a collection of 12 short stories. Jan is writing one of them. Hers is called The Clinic. It's a wonderful story, and I won't tell you more about that. She's going to talk about her story in a bit. But we called it Her Dark Voice because that's what it's about. It's about proving that women can write dark fiction. And what I also wanted to do was to do something for good. That sounds a bit cheesy, but for me, cancer research is very important. I've lost lots of family members to cancer. My cousin Yvonne, she's barely out in her 40s. She's had breast cancer for 15 years. She's in and out of hospital all of the time. And it was really important that I do something that matters, that's connected to women on a very deep level. So I started writing to people about 1.5 years ago and saying, I've got this project idea and I want science fiction, fantasy and horror, a mixture of these stories, all written by women with a dark twist. Now, a lot of people were far too busy with other writing projects, etc. But luckily, I found 10 writers. There's one lady who's got 2 stories in here, and pulled all these stories together. We had a couple of hiccups trying to get things sorted out for an event I ran last year, but finally I managed to pull this together in the last month or so. The edits were minor because they're all incredibly talented writers, to be perfectly honest. It was really just a typo, grammar kind of house style type editing that had to be done. So it was already a great advantage. I mean, in here I've got JC Bedford, who's got a 3-book deal with Door. She's got some new books coming out. She's quite well known in fandom. I've got Lynn M. Cochrane, who unfortunately couldn't be here today due to her health, but she sends her best wishes, and she's part of the Cannon Hill Writers Group, which is a local group we have. Linda Collins lives in Northern Ireland. We've got Jane Fenn, who science fiction fans will have heard of. We've got a couple of Americans in here who I've had dealings with through Fringe Works. We've got Guy Seabold, who writes for Solaris and Angry Robot. And we've got Liz Williams, who you've got to have heard of. She's a fantastic writer. And interestingly today, she blogged on her live journal about the issue of women in fandom, which I know you wanted to talk about. And one of the things that she was saying was, have we gone too far in respect of expecting female characters to carry swords, guns, wear leather, have daggers, be kick-ass females who can't have a relationship but have this all complex, oh I love him, oh I don't thing going on, and have this very stereotypical romance going on and this very stereotypical characterisation? What about the quiet women? What about the women who just have to run a family? The mothers like Briar in Bone Shaker, the women in Redemption and Indigo by Karen Lord. What about the real natural women who exist there? They need to be represented too. We've actually got a story in here representing a lesbian relationship, which I was really pleased to see, because you don't see that very often either, yet it's a part of life. It's a part of what happens. So it's an ongoing debate at the minute, and I wanted to be part of that because it's something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, I know there's certainly a lot that's been said recently in terms of that. I think one of the main points at the moment is, and certainly in terms of films and TV, is Joss Whedon, who constantly gets asked, kind of, why do you always write strong female characters, to which his response is normally, because people still keep asking me that question.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that.
We went to a talk by Neil Gaiman and said, you write, really wonderful female characters. He said, I grew up with the fact that if there was a woman in a book, it was generally a bloke with breasts. It wasn't actually a woman. And he says, writing female characters, you've all got a mother or a sister or a grandma and women in your life. How can you not write decent female characters?
Yeah, and what about elderly women? They don't exist. Adrian, you were going to say something?
I think it's been an evolution. I mean, Ursula K. Le Guin, in an interview that she once gave, when she was asked why she wrote about male characters, said because she wanted to be published. It was the advantage, the benefit of writing male characters was that she got published. And in terms of stories that involve female characters now, there's still a very large male readership out there. The women that were writing and introducing female characters were writing for a male audience to start with. The female audience that tends to follow science fiction genre does tend to be a female audience who love the urban fantasy genre and are used to strong female leads taking the male role. So it only seems natural for me that that's the direction that the fiction has gone. From a man's point of view, I actually find writing for female characters easier than writing for male characters, because as a single guy for the last 20 odd years, most of the people that I've got to know really well have been women. And so I find that because I base things on reality, I can write about women. And, what I see as a heroic female lead is not the protagonist who goes out and has fist fights, hits people with swords and things like that. But actually, the inquisitive, nosy, pushy, brainy,
the Gail Carrigan and Emma Newman type of female lead.
out of joint character, who is having to fight for their place in the world, because that's what we see in reality all the time.
Which goes back to Josh Whedon.
Yeah.
Buffy is that nosy
Parker,
girl, plucky girl, but she is
kick-ass as well.
And she has vulnerabilities, which is important. She's
vulnerable.
real.
She has a coterie of friends. Faith, on the other hand, came in as the archetypal kick-ass
She's like the kind of Terminator
bloke
type.
with tits.
She's like your villainess, so she's completely psychotic.
Yes. But she is that kick-ass thing
Yeah.
that is repeated
To
again and
offset
again. in
that
parallel.
need.
Yes. And
But I have to point out about this. I mentioned it to Liz today. One of the characters that stands out for me, you'll have to forgive me because I can't remember the character's name. I read so many books and do so many book reviews. Is the one by Seanan Maguire in her Discount Armageddon series. What I liked about this girl is she's pretty, but she's not, standout gorgeous, drop dead gorgeous. She wears spangly outfits. She's a ballroom dancer, but she also happens to protect the cryptids hidden under the streets of this urban village that she lives in. So she's got both of those qualities. She can fight, but she also does a great turn in a little dance, and she's pretty and she likes girly things. And there's no harm to like pink. You can like pink, it is allowed. You can still be a strong woman and like pink. And that's what the breast cancer awareness campaign is all about, actually. They use pink as their signature colour.
there again, though, don't you think that's gone too far?
It has a little bit with all the pink going
any
over.
catalogue, like Argos catalogue or something like that, every single girl's toy is pink.
That annoys me.
That
really annoys me.
Just the
You
Hello Kitty
can't get away
type.
from it. You can't get away from the pink. It's
But the
annoying.
background behind the toys are also pink.
Yes.
And it's, you look in the sections and it's pink, purple,
Pink,
purple,
pink
and
all
it's
over.
blue, red.
Yeah.
And I can remember my daughter coming back when she was 18 months old and she said, oh, well, I have to like pink, I'm a girl. And, boys are brave
I'm
and
not
girls
that's a
aren't.
boy's colour.
And then
Oh,
she,
yes.
I want to play football. Can I play football when I'm a boy, when I grow up? I'm like, well, no, you can play football, you can do anything, you can be brave, you can be what you
can
want
be
to
what
be,
you want, and that's...
like the colour you want to like, and not be these
And you can be
stereotypes.
independent.
So the whole pink thing is I think gone too far, because it's come to represent female kind in society.
Well, you have to like pink.
Well,
if you're a girl.
you must like pink if you're a girl.
I think the kind of
You don't
girl
have to, but it's okay to like pink as well.
Yes.
It's okay to like makeup and still kick somebody's ass.
It started out as an imposition on homosexuals in Germany in the Second World War. You know, so it's kind of, it was used to say those men are girly in a very fascist society, and it's something that I guess manufacturers picked up on during that period and used, and it kind of evolved and survived that period into something different. I mean, yeah, if you want to like pink, you like pink. If you're a guy, I guess you've got to call it puce. But yet, women, I tend to find women wear burgundy and black, and oh my goodness, you're wearing
Oh, we're all wearing black, apart from a little bit pink going on there.
But it's kind of, it's almost a myth that the
I do
only
have
time
pink now,
the
though.
only time people say they like pink is when they've got a lot of pink.
Are you looking at me?
No. If your childhood is pink, or your childhood is blue if you're a guy or whatever, you're just surrounded by stuff that colour, and it becomes sort of the way it is.
It's the nature versus nature argument, isn't it?
Well, because I remember
It didn't exist when I was
teddy
young.
bears. My first teddy bear had a blue bow, and pink and blue was more about child. You know, when the child is born, and it was about decorating the room, the colour or whatever. And when you entrench something like that, it just, it just moves forward. And the thing is that in terms of writing, the people that are writing tend to be people who are outsiders, who are breaking the mould, who are fighting against conformity. If people fight against conformity, the last thing they're going to want to do is represent pink.
Yeah.
Yes. A great way to be non-conformist, though, is to go to a rock club wearing pink.
Yes.
You say, you know that guy, the one in black? No.
I went to a rock club wearing a white suit. Believe me, that's good.
I bet. Yeah. See, I want to bring it back again to the gender, just to plug myself, if you don't mind.
By all means.
By all means, excellent. I've written quite extensively on the whole gender parity and gender in fandom issues, and was actually bullied over my TAF campaign quite extensively when I was running for TAF last year over this, because I decided that I should have a chance because I'm a woman, and that was taken very, very harshly. But also, I've written an essay called Vaginas in Horror. Yes, I did say that out loud, Vaginas in Horror, because there was a big uproar back in February during Women in Horror Month. Now, every February, every year, for the past couple of decades, there has been Women in Horror Month, which is Women Write Horror Too. And as part of a book coming out called Horror 101, which contains a plethora of essays to help new horror writers gain their feet and give advice, etc., I sort of took the angle to do with networking and why ostracise 50% of your readership by being an idiot over gender and by not accepting the fact that women write horror too. But this argument that came up was, I won't name the individual, but he... No, I really couldn't. It wouldn't be fair. But he went online, all over Facebook and on the internet, and posted a pair of the lips that the women use for the Women in Horror Month symbol, with a pair of little fangs coming out of them like a vampire, tilted it to the left so it was vertical, stuck to it a map of a vagina next to it, and said, why are you pathetic women using a picture of a vagina when you're trying to get out of that box? So he assumed that the lips meant vagina. There was a big massive uproar, and then the hashtag Vaginas in Horror started, and it's still going strong. And in sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, against this kind of misconception running, tons of women over Facebook and female horror authors, including Rhiannon Frater, they use the lip symbol to represent themselves for that whole month of February to say, look, lips are mine, I can show my lips, I can wear lipstick, I can do what I want. It does not mean I'm using the vagina to represent who I am. And that was really quite a huge uproar over that one. But I refer to it in my essay, Vaginas in Horror, and I called it Vaginas in Horror to specifically taunt and tantalise and to say, look, there is a problem here. Yes, I agree with Jan, it's not as big a problem as some of the private workplaces, as I experienced in the civil service, as the experience we would have had 20, 30 years ago, but unfortunately it is still an issue, and it shouldn't be. Gender parity, as Jan said, shouldn't be an issue.
No, it should be because you're good, not your sex.
Yeah, because
You should be
It's getting the
accepted for what
chance
you
to be
are.
good, that's the problem.
yeah, because Emma Newman flagged it up recently with
The Waterstones.
The Waterstones issue, where they've basically produced a list of who you should be reading in science fiction, fantasy, and horror, and so forth.
Isn't the bookseller, it's the publicists from the actual publishing companies who pay to have these books on the reader to on the phone. They pay for those face outs.
Well, with the Waterstones thing as well, it wasn't just that new women writers were being ignored. New writers
It was
in general.
Yeah, I think it was like most of them, there hadn't been anything that was published in the last 10 years, and 90% of them had been dead for 20 years. The other problem is that the high street book selling has contracted in terms of what it puts out there, which means that there's only a limited number of seats for new books, and because there is still a legacy of male-dominated science fiction readers, if you were given a choice of two books, the one that you know is most likely to sell is by a male. And in science fiction, that is still the situation. And
Do you think that is still the
it is
situation?
still the situation, and I actually think it's got worse since the 1980s.
Really? Okay.
And the reason for that is because in the late 70s and early 1980s, we had the emergence of some brands that started to really take off in role-playing and in comics. You had the 2000 AD, and you had Games Workshop.
Yep.
And both of those were very male dominated.
Yes.
And you know, it's been hard for Games Workshop to get successful female writers to stay with them. In fact, it's been hard for them to I think Anne Lyle springs to mind, but outside of that,
Sarah Corkwell's recently got a book coming out with Solaris.
And the thing is that the process of having in-house staff who are paid peanuts for these books and for these comics means that the only people who are interested and looking at that gateway are the guys that read the comics and play the role-playing games. And at the time, they were targeting, Games Workshop was targeting...
with the completely unrealistic representations of women.
Games Workshop was Forest Valerio. Games Workshop was targeting 12-year-old boys. And when you're targeting 12-year-old boys, there's not many 12-year-old girls you're going to target. And anybody who's older than 12 isn't even aware of what's going on until it's too late.
I was reading that stuff when I was 12, but I didn't have two older brothers who probably coloured my reading material. But
See, my father, he brought me up on Dracula and the Likes, so I was okay to start with.
So, I'm still very much involved in the role playing and live role playing community now, and there has certainly within that community been a massive shift towards kind of equal amounts of men and women in it now. When I started, there certainly wasn't. There were like maybe 2 or 3 girls in the entire club out of like 50 people.
There's been a major victory this year in the Games Workshop world, because of course they've actually come out and announced that they're allowing female space marines or whatever it is.
Oh yes.
Doing that now. 6 months ago you had a right go with a couple of the people.
Yeah, a couple of the people on the panels.
They could only recommend one book to Theresa to read, which was the one with the Sisters of Battling, because nothing else did.
But apparently they're not real female space marines.
Exactly, and of course, when I think of females in the Games Workshop world, I remember 6-breasted figures of the demons of Slanesh, or whatever they were, the Chaos Demonettes of Slanesh, which were this, 6-breasted, 6 naked breasts, of course, female figures that were the only female figures you saw. And the thing is as well, it was a legacy of sexist fiction in the 70s. You've mentioned John Norwood, but it was just, if you read any book from the 1950s through to the 1970s, there is an undercurrent of sexism and misogyny, which is unavoidable.
John Wyndham.
Ian Fleming. It's there with all of them. It's so hard because, you had female science fiction writers writing as men, James Tiptree, Jr., whoever. It was safer to pretend to be a man to get published, which was crazy.
C.J. Cherry.
Julian May,
Yeah, there is a writer who I'm going to give her secret and divulge it now, Jane Fenn. I won't tell you the publisher, but she venomously went against the idea that she would be J. Fenn. She really went against the whole initial thing and held her stand and won her battle. But the fact that she had to fight that battle, and this was in the last 10 years, isn't good.
Yeah.
Because women can't write science fiction. Hello, have you read Karen Lord? Naomi Foyle? Stephanie Salter? I could go on and on and on.
There's been many female science, but as you say, many have had initials rather than their real names, because that goes back to George Eliot. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Habit started then.
I have to say, and I don't mean to be rude, but the hard route is the woman fighting to get published. There's always been the woman fighting to get published. The easy route should be the men who recognise that this is an issue, writing about female characters and actually creating memorable stories that buck the trend, that become something that people can argue about. If J.R.R. Tolkien had been a little bit stronger with his female characters,
He had some.
Yeah, so they invented one for the Hobbit.
that would have had an impact, and if 1 or 2 classic writers had actually taken up the torch for women when it was all men, that would make it easier for women to write what they want to write. And it's very difficult to know when I'm looking at books by women whether it's a book they're writing because it's the niche that they can be published in, like urban fantasy, or whether they are writing what will get them published.
Having said that, as an editor of anthologies,
Yeah.
I have found when I was doing Dark Horizons and for the BFS, and then I've been doing stuff for the Alchemy Press, that for every 10 men, you get 1-2 women.
Yeah.
This is just in your slush pile.
It's absolutely true. I
It
mean, I
is
think
so-
one of our books, Cadavers, coming out, maybe its topic, dead bodies, could be that we had mostly men who submitted to that. Yeah, mostly men.
It is quite true that, I mean, who was it, Tor, Judith, the editor of Tor, did a survey,
Yeah.
and she proved that again, that so many more men submitted, particularly in the science fiction area, so many more men than women.
But is it a confidence thing? Is it because they are told they're not allowed to do this self-fulfilling prophecy?
I
They
think when
believe
their
it.
families, they've probably got more
It is a
time.
confidence thing. I mean, we were lucky. We actually got a big hit on female writers almost from the beginning, didn't we?
Yeah. But we made a point of
yeah.
advertising the fact, with me being a
Yeah.
kind of waving feminist,
Well, that's very
that
true.
was
I mean,
important.
one of the things that was very important to me when I set up Fringeworks, I set up Fringeworks, then Theresa came on board, and then Nightwatch Press came on board under Theresa's wing. But one of the things that stood out to me was that, you know, I was a guy setting up an imprint. Big deal. You know, I wasn't really going to have any impact except for the fact that I believed that the ideas that I had and what I was going to do were different to everybody else. Now I've got a bit of a reputation and I can go it alone as a man, and that might sound crazy, but I can go it alone as a man because people know who I am and what I do and that it's different.
Yeah.
Initially, I'm quite open that the thing that made the difference to me was actually having a bolshy, I won't say attention seeking, but a very, very larger than life personality running an imprint that was screaming women. And from that perspective, I was happy to sit back and not take the limelight because Theresa was doing a great job promoting things, but also she was attracting a little bit of controversy, a little bit,
A little bit.
a little bit of a backlash. But at the same time, I mean, people didn't know whether she was actually Fringeworks or I was Fringeworks half the time, and that created a little bit of confusion. But the truth of the matter was that if you wind her up, let her go. Which sounds terribly chauvinistic now saying.
Yeah, but I know what you mean. I take it in the vein it was intended.
If you nudge in a certain direction, Theresa just launches off the page. I set up an imprint to print 4 books. By the end of our first year, we'd done over 20. Most of which were because Theresa had absolutely knocked the ball out of the park in terms of commissioning. Any time I'd have an idea for a book, Theresa would announce it.
Yeah.
Which created the biggest backlog any publisher could ever have in the shortest possible space of time. We are meeting our commitments and we are delivering those books now, but it's been a hard time. Theresa is not always in the best of health. I've just had a heart attack and just spent time recovering from a heart attack, so you know that was the stress of publishing. Obviously, no, not quite. But one of the things that happened out of that was we were producing a large amount of books, and the kind of stories that we were looking at were naturally targeting women writers. We did one of the first things we did was Christmas stories. Women love Christmas stories. It's one of those things, but it's not particularly a sex-oriented or a gender-oriented.
I think a lot more men are bar humbug about Christmas.
Men are grumpy about Christmas. We did modern retellings of Grimm's fairy tales and other fairy tales, and that automatically attracted a lot of women who like that kind of stuff. And so we started off very strongly in that camp. And as we were gathering steam, going to events and things like that, the issues about the way that women are treated in small circles in the comic community, in the SF community or whatever, were starting to be talked about in a way that they hadn't been talked about a lot before.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I think an awful lot of these stories have come out of the woodwork more recently, and I don't think that there's a bigger issue now than there was. I think there's a more open issue now than there was. And the people who didn't want to talk about it before are the ones who are complaining now because they still don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But we we found that there were lots of issues. I mean, one of the things about Her Dark Voice, yes, it is an all-women anthology. That's a double-edged sword very often. This was a specific thing that Theresa wanted to do to make a point about a particular type of writing.
Yeah.
If somebody suddenly, I mean, there's a publisher I shan't mention, and I'm not having a go at them because I think the fact that they've seen something and they're doing something about it really matters. But a publisher realised they've not published much by women. So their response was, let's do a women-only anthology. And that sent out two signals. On the one hand, it was saying, we're representing for women. On the other hand, it's saying, we haven't been very good. And secondly, the only way a woman's going to get published by us is if we have a women-only anthology. Neither of those are the messages they intended to send. But those are the things that people talked about.
That's how it was perceived.
Steve Jones did one, didn't he, a few years ago, and got a lot of flack for being women-only.
It's entirely possible. Now, I suggested an anthology, which I still dearly want to do, which was actually men versus women, which is having the same advertising and marketing for two books. A male editor, female editor, all male book, all female book, same subject matter, roughly, and actually putting them out there and not saying this is a book by women for women and this is a book by men for men. These are stories by women and stories by men. We're putting them in separate books. Let's see how they sell. When they've got exactly the same marketing, when they've got exactly
the research.
When they've got exactly the same sales pitch, when they've got exactly the same style of content, is one going to sell more than the other? And if it's going to sell more than the other, why?
Yeah.
And the only way you could do that is to look at both books as identical in the same context. And I still hope we can do that. But it's the problem that you've got with women's issues very often is that the evidence is anecdotal and it's not statistical.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, nobody's been monitoring it for years and years and years and years. And all you get is people's experiences of this industry, this circuit, that circuit. And for every person who says there was a problem, there's 10 who say there wasn't. And that's not because the 10 are right and the 1 is wrong, but because nobody likes to be criticised.
I have an anecdote I'd like to share, and you know what one is coming, don't you, Adrian?
Yeah.
I'm not going to name the event again because it would be unfair, although I have referred to this in my essay for Horror 101. I went to a new horror convention 2 years ago now, and it was with a bunch of friends, and I was thoroughly looking forward to it, and I turned up the event, had a great day, but as the day progressed, I started noticing something. For the 30 men that were there, I think there were a couple of wives, a couple of children, and not one single female horror author, not one, not a single one. And basically, I asked the question, at the end they gathered all the panellists up to the front. There was not a single female moderator, but it was a female organiser. And I said, can I ask a question? Yeah, go ahead. Where are the women? A couple of blank stares as I asked the question. A couple of laughs. I said, no, I'm being serious. I said, this is a horror convention. Have a look at your photo up there. Have a look at your panellists. There is not one single woman. Why haven't you got a female horror author there? To which the organiser responded, they just write Mills and Boon. Of course, I was grabbed by the guy next to me, who's a friend. He said, I was literally restrained, and he whispered into my ear, you've made your point. And then a whole debate ensued across the thing where people started looking at each other, and a couple of people came up to me privately afterwards and said, you know what, you were right. Wow.
I think it's worth mentioning that that event had 13 male writer guests. Not 3 or 4.
Yeah.
13. And not even a female moderator. The sad thing was one of the organisers was the woman who made the Mills and Boon comment. And so I'll be sending her a copy of Her Dark Voice as a complimentary gift.
It is one of those perennial problems having organised a few conventions.
Yeah, oh God, tell me about it.
Getting that
balance.
Getting them to actually say they're going to come, never mind having the guests. So it's it can be a real problem.
It can.
Although that did sound rather like it was deliberate.
Let's talk to Vicky.
Vicky,
She's-
Yeah.
can we speak to
Absolutely,
Vicky?
yeah, of course, by all means. Hello.
Hello.
Hot chocolate now, happier?
And a big spoon.
Marvellous.
It's not drinking.
I'll just introduce a little bit about Vicky and
Yeah,
say
sure.
that I approached her to write the foreword for the book. It is one of the most passionate, beautiful forewords I've ever read in my life. It's magnificent. It really is beautiful. And I asked her because I knew she was the right person, and if she tells you a little bit about herself, that will explain why.
Okay. Well, I've actually had breast cancer twice. I'm 35 now. I was diagnosed when I was 30. A bit of a shock. Wasn't expecting it. I haven't got it in the family. And then I had it once, I had all the treatments, and then I got diagnosed again. So I've sort of been through all the treatment twice over. I've seen pretty much every type of treatment it feels like there can be. And I think I'm quite passionate about awareness at a young age, because there's a lot of young people getting it now, and so the numbers are increasing. We don't know why. Might be just that people are more aware of finding lumps and things where they weren't before. And it's just about sort of letting people know it's all right, you can get through this. And there's a lot of trials, a lot of research going on, and I think it's brilliant what Theresa's done here. Doing this book for charity, especially a research charity, because the research is so important.
Yeah.
I think breast cancer still is one of those ones that a lot of people have heard about, about the wearing pink and all that sort of thing, but there's still a lot of stuff that needs doing, because a lot of people are still dying from it, and they're still getting incurable versions of it, so there's a lot of work to be done still. Yeah.
I think a question, we've spoken a bit about kind of health issues and kind of what it leads on to this business, to ask a question about it. I personally, I had cancer about 5 years ago myself, and I know from my perspective, it kind of put a load of things into place for me, and it made me kind of go, actually, you know what, these are the things I want to do now, and it gave me a bit more focus. Do you think that's a general thing that, kind of when you face something like that, do you think it makes you more, I don't know, does it push you further to do more?
I mean, from my point of view, sorry Vicky, it's just, I got sick 6 years ago. I was ill anyway with a condition called endometriosis, which is a female condition that affects the womb and the lining of the womb. Now, unfortunately, for many, many decades, doctors didn't believe in this disease. The way they don't believe in ME, the way they don't believe in fibromyalgia, which I also have.
So do I.
Now, I went into trauma during surgery for my endometriosis. They had to pull out of the surgery, and as a result, because of the trauma, I got fibromyalgia. One of the projects I plan to do is every year release a book where the proceeds will go to research into a particular health area. The next one I'm doing is endometriosis. I'll be also doing one on mental health and also one on fibromyalgia, because I want people to understand how this can affect the person who suffers from this particular condition.
Pain, constant pain that just becomes background.
Yeah.
You notice when you're not in pain rather than when you are.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's...
You notice when you're having a good day rather than... And it's never really a good day, is it? It's a not so bad day. Also, as well as that, I do think that there needs to be more awareness about conditions like endometriosis, and I'm looking at raising funding next year to go around local surgeries to talk about these conditions, have little sessions, little workshop sessions around local surgeries where sufferers can go and talk about what experiences they've had to try and raise awareness, in particular endometriosis, because although I've had a hysterectomy which landed me with the trauma, I've now been told that the only piece of feminine tissue left inside me might be engulfed again with this condition, and I thought I'd escaped it. So it's one of those things.
I think gender-based disease generally is because it's taboo.
Yes. You're not allowed to talk about it.
Oh yeah, I had testicular cancer, so yeah,
my eldest
tough to talk
brother
about.
died of testicular cancer, age 20. I mean, that was a long time ago. My father died of male cancer also, and it's not talked about.
No, it's really not. No, I remember at the time, because I did a big kind of blog at the time, and I put it out. Loads of people were like, "Wow, I just didn't even think about it."
No. But I think
did
it's
cause a lot
important
of
to
people
share.
to check, and it caused a lot of women to check as well. By going,
Yeah.
oh my God, we're so young. I don't think that we thought that it could happen. And yes, we ought to start checking as well.
Yeah.
And you laughed quite a lot that one blog got so many women to touch themselves.
Absolutely,
So,
My brother was 20. There's a young lad at our writers group who had testicular cancer at 13, 14. I mean, it can strike at any age.
Yeah, it's crazy, yeah. So.
And there's more when you're younger, I think.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be up until you're 35, because I was right at the kind of tail end when I got it. That's where it's
It's sad that this is the situation we're in.
Gender-based cancers that are just so taboo that people don't talk about.
Absolutely.
That's
I mean, from my point of view as well, it was a good thing in one way, because I was stuck in a very boring, mundane civil service job that I hated. Yes, hello, can you hear me? I hated that job. And
yeah, I worked in the public sector too.
yeah, and basically I started writing about my health. Then I started writing gruesome horror stories and started getting acceptances and ended up with an anthology and then a collection of my own because I had to find a way to express and to use that time when I was awake, which is normally 3 till 6 in the morning because I don't sleep very well. So for me it was a big eye-opener.
Look, I'm aware that we're cutting into the time that the event's supposed to start, so we're kind of getting around to wrapping up. Can we get a brief synopsis of the stories that are in the book?
Well, there are 12, so there's no way
just some
I could run through it. There are demons, there are angels, there's a venomous mutation creature, there are zombies.
The clinic actually deals with cancer, deals with leukemia.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's up there.
It's a whole plethora of stuff there. I mean, it's just a marvellous collection of mixed dark fantasy, science fiction and horror, and the horror that's in there is really quite dark.
Can you get it through a website or?
You can get it on Amazon. The ebook will be live at some point in the next few days. The paperback is live there at the minute. It's $9.99. Or you can order signed copies from myself through Facebook, from my website, wherever. We're hoping to sell lots of copies and lots of raffle tickets today. But yes, it's on Amazon.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I think that's it. Thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time out to talk. And this should be up online at some point next week. And yes, go out, buy the book.
Brilliant. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Big fucking gun.